if you can ground yourself in the moment and not create the catastrophic thinking and the rumination and not be the what ifs, the what ifs, what ifs, you will make better, more impactful, and again, compounding decisions on a day to day basis. Welcome to the Endgame podcast, where I bet you didn't know what you didn't know. I'm Dr. Ryan Wakeham, successful entrepreneur and your Endgame coach. I'm here to chat with you today about the concept of mindfulness and entrepreneurship, how taking small steps lead to ultimately big successes. This is a topic, as you know, we've touched on a handful of times. As a psychiatrist, mindfulness is near and dear to my heart. It's been critically important as part of my story of success and entrepreneurship. And it's beyond just like teaching individuals how to be mindful. It's really the idea of, if you practice something, that's why we call it practice. If you practice medicine, if you practice mindfulness and take small steps every single day, you will ultimately create an end game, an end result that is notably much larger than maybe you ever even thought possible. One of the ways to kind of think about that is a very common technique around, I would say, both mindfulness and just the idea of journaling in general, specifically as it layers into long-term success. If you ever hear Grant Cardone talk, or some of the most successful minds in this space, Tony Robbins, one of the things they talk about doing as part of like an annual planning. So actually around this time of year, every year, you would start looking at your next year goals, right? You've heard me say before, a goal without a strategy and a plan is really just a wish or a dream. And although having wishes and dreams are great, private equity firms and VC capital funds don't tend to invest in wishes and dreams. They tend to invest in outcomes and goals and successes. So if you want something to be successful, again, if you listen to David Meltzer and Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone, they will tell you one of the most impactful ways in doing that is this offshoot of mindfulness, which is journaling, which is to write something down. And frankly, to be a little bit of a visionary with that. So be very forward looking. And probably most importantly, be able to stretch outside your comfort zone, even from your imagination. So you would want to make that goal in your annual planning for next year something that's truly audacious, something that, isn't, I'm going to grow 5% year on year. That's great. That will get you somewhere eventually. But maybe you want your audacious goal to be, I'm going to double my practice size next year. You might not have any idea how to get there, and that's okay. You do want to eventually develop a strategy and create a trajectory through which you will eventually get there. But you can't make your, audacious goals 1% growth. You'll never stretch outside your comfort zone, and you'll never truly reach for the stars in terms of your ultimate success, which means, again, your end game will likely be much smaller than, hopefully, even though you can't maybe see it now, as we talk about, you don't know what you don't know. That end game in the future can only stand to be much bigger the more you stretch and get outside your comfort zone. So I want to first talk about one of ways I've used mindfulness in my own successes, and I'll talk to you about something I've done, have shared with you recently around climbing A basins via Ferrata, and that is, I am violently afraid of heights. And so, but my wife is not. And so my wife often gets me to stretch outside my comfort zone as it relates to things like heights. So she's convinced me to skydive at this point, which I'll never do again. And now climbing the Via Ferrata, which I also will likely never do again. However, the way in which I was able to be successful, to climb the 1,000 vertical feet to 13,000 feet and be able to share those views with my wife and our family, is through mindfulness. I was able to use deep breathing exercises to ground myself in the moment and not have my thought process be 20, 30, 40 steps ahead, catastrophizing, what if I slip? What if what if this breaks? What if what if, what if, what if, right? So I was able to use the concept of mindfulness to be present in the moment with every breath, every step, so that I wasn't getting myself stretched far beyond, my own comfort zone mentally in that moment in time. So I could take it moment by moment and be successful in, scaling the east wall. So I encourage you, as you think about how can you use mindfulness in your entrepreneurship and in your daily practices, that absolutely can include meditation we've talked about before. It can include deep breathing exercises, which are, very simple techniques you can just Google or watch videos on. Wim Hof does breathing exercises that I think are that I actually personally again use. So other things I use on a regular basis for me to be successful, there's Wim Hof breathing, which is another form of mindfulness breathing exercise. Journaling, again, journaling is critically important, both to remember where you came from, to kind of solidify lessons learned, but also to put in some audacious goals that you may not have a strategy for today, but hopefully you'll have a strategy for as you stretch outside your comfort zone and have it on paper so you know it's something you're committing to do. So you will eventually get there. So mindfulness in entrepreneurship has served me incredibly well beyond just my psychiatric background. And I want that for you as well, as you think about what are some simple things you can do to really implement this strategy behind a long-term successful outcome, and ultimately the end game, as I always say, of your wildest desires. You don't get to an end game of your wildest desires by 1% growth year on year. Speaking of 1%, another kind of mindfulness exercise or thought process is, if you've read the book Atomic Habits, there's a concept in the book that really kind of exemplifies this idea of the butterfly effect, right? So as we think about how we can make day by day kind of very small but yet compounding changes to again end up at something that is a multiple of where you are today as compared to a linear growth model. And again, this is where you can use mindfulness. You can use being present in the moment to make key decisions. And frankly, journaling or chunking down in a way that you can make those baby steps every single day that then compound on one another for tremendous success. And so if you've read the book, you know that there's a concept of, if you were to make a 1% change, so not my goal for next year is 1% growth, but if you were to say, I'm going to grow 1% per day over the course of the next year, you will have ultimately grown 37 times where you are today, right? So in the course of 12 months, if you were to change something 1% every single day, 1% is very attainable every day on many different things. It's incumbent upon you to figure out, what does 1% per day look like for you in your business or your venture? But if you were to change something 1% day on day, you will have grown 37x, right? It will have compounded to 37x. The same is true in the opposite direction. If you were to be an expert, if you've done your Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, and you were to not do something at 1% per day, you will be obsolete in a very short amount of time. So compounding interest goes both directions. So in the positive and unfortunately in the negative. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, which is, one of the concepts I hold near and dear is, if you're not climbing, you're sliding, right? So basically, not to bring it back to the Via Ferrata, but if you aren't stretching and climbing and doing the 1% day on day, you are actually passively losing 1% day on day, and you're becoming obsolete as compared to becoming exceptional and exemplary. So I encourage you to take a chapter out of the Atomic Habits book, take a chapter away from individuals like Grant Cardone, David Meltzer, Tony Robbins. Think about annual planning, create both audacious, imaginary, crazy goals, document that, and then put a strategy behind it. How can you grow 1% per day and be 37 times more successful a year from now? Those are all chunk down, butterfly effect, mindfulness, day on day, small changes that compound to create the ultimate end game of your wildest desires. Finally, I'll say the other thing that I've found mindfulness to be incredibly helpful for in my entrepreneurship is if you can ground yourself in the moment and not create the catastrophic thinking and the rumination and not be the what ifs, the what ifs, what ifs, you will make better, more impactful, and again, compounding decisions on a day to day basis. Talked a little bit before about graphing out what are your different decisions, or these decisions you should be making, or these tasks you should be doing, or these things you should be delegating. Are they truly urgent and important, or are they just fires that need to be handled that will end up distracting you from making better decisions with your business? And again, that could be personal as well, so not just professional. But how are you allocating your time and your energy to make key decisions? And an important piece on how you allocate energy is through the concept of mindfulness. Again, if you can be present here and now, be able to synthesize all the information, and then make really important key decisions, not through a lens of emotion, not through a lens of rush and time, and not through a lens of scarcity and I have no energy for this right now. Those decisions will serve you in the wrong direction, right? Those will be the negative compounding 1% day on day that will make you obsolete and ineffective in no time flat. If you want to be a peak performer, if you want to be audacious and you want to have a compounding positive experience, you will want to create a platform or a mindset or that mental ecosystem where you can make really key decisions in a non-emotional state to better serve you, your company, and your family. I'm Dr. Ryan Wakeham, successful entrepreneur and your end game coach. I'm here to teach you how to exist today through mindfulness and meditation so that you can effectively expand and compound tomorrow and create the ultimate end game of your wildest desires. If you like today's episode, please don't hesitate to share it, like it, subscribe, tune in. Hopefully, don't tune out. And I'm excited to share with you more information as it comes my way into your way with time. Have a great rest of your day.